bring the little ones up here to show how it must be for the Lord with us sometimes. Man, what makes you confident? Where does your confidence come from? That's something I was thinking about earlier this week, mainly in the context of work. We had a busy week and a lot of things came up, and so that made me ask myself that question. What gives me confidence that I can do something that is asked of me just in regards to everyday work? You know, or a client that we have for a video wants something in particular. And essentially, I have faith that I can do that, but I think Dad mentioned it a couple weeks ago. Like our faith, it's not a blind faith, it's an informed faith. So I have confidence that I can do these things, even if it's something in particular that I haven't done before, because I feel confident that I can figure it out, because I have a track record to look back. And that's just with myself, and I fail all the time. You know, there are moments that we experience things that we haven't before, but we can be even more confident in what the Lord will provide for us than, of course, in our own ability, whatever it may be. Yeah, I put a note here. It's something I thought of earlier this week too. You know, I had faith this morning that the sun would rise, because since it went down last night, I hadn't seen it rise again. So it's not I had faith that it would rise, but it's not a blind faith. I'd seen it happen before, but not today. I hadn't until it happened. So it's kind of, to me, it feels that way, to where our faith is informed by what God has done prior. You know, and of course I would venture to say that we have far more reason to be confident in God than we do even the next sunrise. You know, we may not see a way forward now with whatever it is that we're experiencing, but we can have assurance of the way forward that we hope for. Turn to Hebrews chapter 10, again in verse 19 here. Verse 19, therefore, brothers, since we have confidence to enter the holy places by the blood of Jesus, by the new and living way that he opened for us through the curtain, that is, through his flesh, and since we have a great priest over the house of God, let us draw near with a true heart and full assurance of faith, with our hearts sprinkled clean from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. So, you know, verse 23 is essentially saying, you know, hold fast to the confession of our hope, i.e. faith, because he is faithful. And I was looking up the definition of faithful just in itself, and one of the parts of the definition was dedicated. So essentially, he's saying that we can hold fast to our faith because he's dedicated to us to deliver. So he's always dedicated and faithful in that way. You know, I was thinking back to my own deliverance and just the way that God did that with me. And, you know, the effects of that go far beyond the deliverance just in itself. Because it can be its own self-contained and say, okay, you had this problem and now you're delivered from it. But of course, it doesn't just end there. That's not the only thing. And his faithfulness to deliver me in the way that he did informs my faith about everything else from that point forward. So I can draw from that and rely on that in ways that I couldn't have if he hadn't done it the way that he did it. So I know we always look back, you know, on things and say, well, I'm so glad that the Lord did it that way and that he didn't give. I think Liz said something earlier this week. You know, she was reflecting and just thanking the Lord that she didn't get everything she wanted when she wanted it. Because, of course, we know that, you know, the Lord knows what we need when we need it, even though we think we know better so often. But, of course, the impact of my deliverance has been much larger than just the act of deliverance within itself. Although sometimes, of course, I still feel like Jesus' disciples when they asked him to increase their faith. I think we probably all experienced that. Turn to Daniel chapter 3. And we already read some of this with Blake, but we'll do it again. Begin in verse 16. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If this be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. And I think it's interesting that they didn't say, we know our God will deliver us. They didn't say that. They said, we know he's able. They even said, but if not, it's like, we're still not going to do this. We're going to be faithful to him because he's going to be faithful to us, whatever that is. They knew maybe that is the way, because, of course, we have so many martyrs who probably felt the same thing, that thought, well, God's able to deliver me from this, but maybe that's not what he needs. That's not what is necessary at this point. I think they could look back and they knew God was able because he had already delivered them so many times up to that point. I think we can look at that and not look at the backstory of it sometimes, some of these things. Their city had been sieged and a big portion of it razed, and the temple was destroyed by a superpower, Babylon. And yet they were delivered through that, taken into captivity themselves, but even through that were taken to a high position in that pagan empire. So they had reason to look back and see, like, okay, God's been faithful all the way back there from the beginning to now. So I've got faith, and it's not a blind faith, it's an informed faith that he's going to continue that. There's no reason not to believe that. If you've been in the faith more than a minute, you have points of reference you can draw from, even if it's not something like what those young men went through. We each have our own things that we can look back to, even if someone's new in the faith. Oftentimes the way that they're brought into the faith itself is a miracle. Like I think about the way that Sandy was brought into the faith. That alone by itself can inform your faith going forward, of God's faithfulness, of his dedication to you. Turn to Psalm chapter 9. Begin in verse 1. I will give thanks to the Lord with my whole heart. I will recount all of your wonderful deeds. I will be glad and exult in you. I will sing praise to your name, O Most High. When my enemies turn back, they stumble and perish before your presence. For you have maintained my just cause. You have sat on the throne, giving righteous judgment. You have rebuked the nations. You have made the wicked perish. You have blotted out their names forever and ever. The enemy came to an end in everlasting ruins. Their cities you rooted out. The very memory of them has perished. But the Lord sits enthroned forever. He has established his throne for justice, and he judges the Lord with righteousness. He judges the peoples with uprightness. The Lord is a stronghold for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble. And those who know your name put their trust in you, for you, O Lord, have not forsaken those who seek you. So even David here is letting his faith be informed by what happened prior. Sing praises to the Lord who sits enthroned in Zion. Tell among the peoples his deeds. For he who avenges blood is mindful of them. He does not forget the cry of the afflicted. Be gracious to me, O Lord. See my affliction from those who hate me. O you who lift me up from the gates of death, that I may recount all your praises, that in the gates of the daughter of Zion I may rejoice in your salvation. Verse 15, the nations have sunk in the pit that they have made, in the net that they hid. Our own foot has been caught. The Lord has made himself known. He has executed judgment. The wicked are snared in the work of their own hands. The wicked shall return to Sheol, all the nations that forget God. For the needy shall not always be forgotten, and the hope of the poor shall not perish forever. Arise, O Lord, let not man prevail. Let the nations be judged before you. Put them in fear, O Lord. Let the nations know that they are but men. So again, throughout that whole thing, even King David is letting God's faithfulness to him and his dedication inform his faith going forward. And if we can take any cue from someone, we can take one from King David, in that he himself, as faithful as he was, is recounting what God has done. It was necessary for him, and for those who would read it after, for him to look back and so many times, this is just one, but there are so many full of them in the Psalms where he's doing the same exact thing, saying, this is the circumstance I'm in right now. This is terrible. I'm surrounded. This is not looking good. But, and he goes and recounts all these things that God has done up to that point and the way he's delivered him. So he's not just relying completely on blind faith and saying, like, I can't look at any of that, just going forward. It's completely informed by God's faithfulness up to that point. Turn to Hebrews chapter 4. Verse 14. Since then we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God. Let us hold fast our confession. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. So again, our faith is not just simply a blind faith. It is hope and assurance that is constantly informed and reinforced by his faithfulness and dedication to us. And of course, we should follow David's lead there, because the Lord has been faithful to us through everything, and he will continue to be, because that is his nature. Amen.